I know that we have a lot of dealers in the room today, and so let's talk about some dealer topics. Kayle, I know that you don't or aren't a really big dealer for large equipment. You have some smaller stuff that you do sell. How do you think about the rental versus dealer relationship from your perspective as a pure rent-to-rent company?
Rental versus dealer. So relationship's huge just because I don't provide any dealership, any sales. It's important for me to have that relationship so when I can direct my customers to a specific dealer if they have a purchasing need or whatnot, it's good having that relationship where I can kind of guide them. And we've had some of our local dealers as well send rental inquiries our way. So just a matter of having that good relationship where we can, work together and just focusing on that.
So let me put you more in the hot seat then.
Mm-hmm.
How do you feel when your local dealer starts running against you?
I've never had that I'm aware of.
Okay.
I've been very fortunate, knock on wood, that we've always worked really well with other rental houses in the city, all the dealerships. And I don't know if it's just because of how we've presented ourselves with these dealers. But knock on wood, we haven't had that kind of competition before.
Okay, I'm going to make the seat hotter then. How would you feel if one of your dealers that you're a big buyer of right now starts running against you?
I would look at it as a challenge, honestly. I would see, what is he potentially offering that I'm not, and how can I beat that? How can I provide better and retain my customers and, just outwork him, essentially.
What do you think a lot of rental companies would say when their dealer starts competing with them?
I've seen it. I've seen it quite a bit. The interesting thing is there's the initial shock. It depends on if they play dirty. Are they going after your customer base, or are they just going into the market? There's a ton of business out there. You don't have to go after my customer base.
Mm-hmm.
I think if they do it as a partnership, it brings a massive level of value because you build brand loyalty to that dealership, and then the dealership won't always have everything the customer needs, and vice versa. The rental house won't always have what it needs. So the two of them working together can actually do well in the market. But if you get a dirty sales rep or a dirty manager that says, we could take all that business because they already know our brand, I've seen that happen too, and it does not go over well.
So what does a good relationship look like between a rent-to-rent company that's a buyer from a dealership when the dealership is also a rental company?
They support each other for parts and service. They do customer training events, and the rental company goes after a lot of the business, and that is shorter term rentals, and the dealership goes after rentals with a lease option and the bigger stuff that ends up converting over. And I think as long as the two of them understand that, and you don't have the dealership going after one-day rentals and one-week rentals, I mean, it just mucks up the pool. Mm-hmm. I think it's when they complement each other of let's go after the business that we're best suited to take over. Somebody needs an 8-month or 9-month rental, as great as that is for the small rental house, the rent to rent, it's really formulated for a dealership because the dealership can say, let's talk about an RPO, let's talk about a purchase, let's talk about all the things that we can do. If you're going to rent it for that long, it may be better for you to buy. And I think as long as both of them understand it, it can really change the dynamics of the business.
Yeah, I think that's so critical. I know from my own personal perspective, it makes me a little uncomfortable when my dealers rent. And we do buy some equipment from dealers who rent, and some of them are great partners. If I see you as a dealer targeting a different customer base, sending me referrals when it's my type of customer base, and being a partner in that, I'll work with a dealer all day, every day who 100%. Also rents, because there's plenty of opportunity in the rental industry.
Yep.
But if you become my competitor, that's a different story, and I think that's hard. But I know that some of the folks here also want to be just great rental companies, and we've got a couple questions about the idea of either decoupling your rental company from your retail company, or how to split between the two, because it's complex, right? Are you going to sell something to somebody, or are you going to rent something to somebody, and which is the right answer?
I think you really have to, and it's interesting to me because you have to do what's best for the customer. And I find too many rental houses where they're afraid to actually approach the customer and say, tell me what your project looks like. And if somebody says, oh, I'm building a hospital for the next 2.5 years, and I'm going to need 10 19-foot scissors out there. And immediately the rental company's like, yes. Where if you have the opportunity to sell those units, you have an obligation to actually sit down with your customer and say, have you looked at, you can spend, hypothetically, just for easy math, you can spend $500 a month times 24 months, and you're going to end up dropping $12,000. I can sell you those same units for $11,000. And you get a tax write-off because you own the equipment, and it's going to be brand new. Now, if you don't help your customer out, the worst thing is they rent it for 2 years, and they come to you at the end of the project and they say, hey, I spent $12,000 on this unit. Why don't you just give them to me? And you already worked it into the rental, and you're like, yeah, that's not going to work that way. And you tense out the relationship. Let them make the decision. Am I going to buy or am I going to rent? But no matter what you choose, I'm here to support you and make sure you make the right decisions. And hopefully you'll build loyal customers because you're an actual advisor, not just an order taker and a money taker.
Yeah, and that's it. Just keeping, the customer's best interest in mind right from the beginning, and having that foresight, because we've all experienced it on those long-term rentals. Like you said, well, I've paid for it, so I should just keep it, and that's always a tricky conversation to have, right?
Absolutely.
So just getting ahead of that will save all the hassle.
Yeah.
Sure.
Some of it comes down to incentives, though, right? And one of the biggest mistakes that I see dealers make is how they incentivize the rental business versus the retail business. And I know that you've lived through some of this, selling equipment and renting equipment. What did you see that was successful in incentivizing or commissioning a rep to be able to make the right decision for the customer without having to be like, my paycheck's going to benefit way more by doing this or this?
Absolutely. I will tell you the one thing right now, I'm working with a lot of big dealerships. And as I'm working with the dealerships, it's interesting to me because almost all the dealerships came from a dealership model, and then they're moving into rental. Where I worked for Ahern Equipment, a rental house that bought, purchased, and developed Snorkel and Extreme. So they started on the rental side and went into the dealer side compared to starting on the dealer side and going into the rental side. Mm-hmm. And with going at it at a reverse angle, I realized my customers were buying equipment and renting equipment. Like, I can either become the complete equipment solution, or I can only take my part of it. And anybody who says, well, I don't want to sell them anything because it cuts into my rental dollars, you're a fool. Because if they have the mindset that they're going to buy something, they're going to buy it. Now, you either sell it to them or they're going to find it somewhere else. And I sat there, and it was incredible to me because I literally had blinders on of that all of my customers rent everything from me. And then all of a sudden I would show up at their yard and they had a forklift there. And I was like, what's that? Oh yeah, we just bought that. Oh, okay. Well, you could have bought it for me and I could have taken the commission on that. So the customers that only rent will always only rent. And the customers that only buy will always only buy. But if you have customers that do both, you have an obligation to take care of both of those and make sure they know they can do anything with you. And, if you don't sell a lot of equipment, I would partner up with your, manufacturers or find the local dealership so that you become that resource so that they know, this is the person who's going to help me out going forward. I think that too many of the rental houses are one-dimensional, where you need to be right now sales. And we actually had this conversation over lunch. You need to become an advisor. People no longer need salespeople. They need trusted advisors and coaches to move them through the process so that when they have challenges, they know they have an advocate. Like, we don't need to be sold. You know what kind of piece of equipment you need on your job site. I don't need you to sell me an excavator. I know I need one. What I need is that if I get it from your company, are you going to be the person that's going to help me navigate customer damage? Are you going to help me navigate over hours? Are you going to help me navigate billing? What are you going to do? And those trusted advisors now are more valued than ever for somebody.
So it sounds like to me that you're actually a fan of versus decoupling a combined rental and retail business where it's not decoupled.
I 100%.
See, I would argue not everybody's Elliott Vigil. And that sounds, or in my experience, that has been way harder for dealers to pull off than the way that you make it sound. The way you just made it sound is beautiful. I think if everybody sold like that or was able to teach or train their people and incentivize properly to do that, I think that'd be great. But I can't think of a time where I've seen a dealer successfully do that really well, and I'm sure that you have. And the ones that I see tend to be more successful are the ones who do separate it out, and they run the rental business like a rental business with its own opportunity, its own growth perspective. You can move up in the rental business. They're not constantly poaching people from the retail from the rental business to the retail business, and that the retail business is the retail business. But of course, then you have the problem of not serving the customer, not consulting, and now you're truly competing against yourself. Mm-hmm. And I don't know that there's a right answer, but I was kind of leaning on the other side of things, but I'm the rental guy here.
Yeah.
So.
I will tell you that a lot of the dealers that I'm finding right now that are branching into the rental side are actually shooting themselves in the foot.
Okay.
And the reason why is the models are different. If I call up and I say, hey, I want to buy a 310 excavator, perfect. We can get it delivered to you, Mr. Customer, in 6 to 8 weeks. And the customer's fine with that. And the entire mentality of the business is we're supplying that opportunity. Where if you look at the rental side of it, if somebody says, I need a 310 Monday morning at 7 a.m., you can't say, I'll get it to you in the next 5 to 6 days. That opportunity, that ship is sunk. And so I see a lot of the dealerships right now where they're sharing staff and they're sharing service techs and they're sharing, and the urgency that is rental does not transfer over to the dealership and vice versa. I think that when you run the two businesses, I think the two businesses need to be separate, but you can still sell equipment. I just think that the service department and the rental department and the deliveries for each one of those businesses need to be their own. Because you have a driver, and if they need to be somewhere at 7 a.m., then they need to be somewhere at 7 a.m. Where if a customer says, hey, I bought a piece of equipment from you, Josh, and you say, perfect, I'll have it delivered on Monday, they really don't care what time it shows up. And it changes the dynamics of how the business is run. So I think I kind of agree with you in the fact that rental has a different function than dealership. But I think they can be complementary if you know how to take care of your customer. But the staff needs to be separate because they're ran differently.
So what I heard was a solid maybe.
It's a solid maybe.
Okay.
With a definite kinda.
With a definite kinda.
Yeah.
Like it. I like it. All right, so I'm going to do a rapid fire answer here, and then we will wrap it up. The question was, where do you think surge or dynamic pricing plays a role in the future? We won't address that today because we actually did probably, 30, 45 minutes on that in a previous podcast.
Correct.
That you can go back and listen to and had a lot of fun. I don't know that we solved the world's problems, but I think we got pretty close to it in that one. But thank you all for joining us for this live version. You're the best audience that we have ever had, the only audience that we've ever had. And really appreciate it. Thank you all those at home. Follow us. We're now on Apple and Spotify and YouTube, and would love to hear more of your questions so we can address them in a future podcast.
Stan,
Thanks
Kayle.
for having me. Appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Thank you all. Have a great day.